Yes, my name's Ben. I'm from On the Verge Cambridge. We're a voluntary group that set up in 2019 with the aim of promoting pollinator-friendly planting in and around Cambridge. And the reason we wanted to do that was to address the biodiversity crisis and especially the catastrophic loss of insect numbers, including bees.
And is this idea of wildflower meadows, is it something that is taking place in other cities and countries, or is it something particular to Cambridge?
It's happening in lots of places actually. So we took our cue from a group in Stirling. They are the original On the Verge up in Scotland, and they've been going for about 10 years creating wildflower meadows in and around Stirling. But there are also groups in Worcester, in Lincolnshire, in many places around the UK now.
Excellent. And particularly here in Cambridge, how many wild meadows and verges are there?
Well, the wildflower meadows, like the one we're in now, which is on Jesus Green, we have about 8 or 9 of these in the city parks, and we're going to produce a few more this autumn and extend a few of the ones that we already have. But we're also looking to work on the road verges as well, to make them much more wildflower and pollinator friendly, and that involves changing the way that they are mowed, cutting them less, cutting them at the right time of year, taking away the clippings to reduce the soil fertility, which encourages wildflowers to grow and therefore makes them a much better habitat for bees and other pollinating insects.
And why are bees important? I know that a lot of people know that bees are important because they produce honey, but of course they're important for other reasons. And I think for this we have Claire, is that correct?
We have Claire.
My name's Claire Wallace and I am a third year PhD student, and my PhD is looking at how road verges impact pollinators, specifically bumblebees.
So what have you found? I mean, we always hear about that pollinators are very important, but why are they important and why we should look after them?
So pollinators are extremely important. Things like bees, hoverflies, butterflies, moths, they contribute massively to ecosystem services and provide us with lots of our food. They also pollinate most of the wildflowers in our environment. And yeah, it's just really important that we take care of them and make sure that they are conserved.
And road verges, I mean, we've always seen wildflower meadows in green areas, but why by the roadside?
So road verges are kind of an opportunity for pollinators. Lots of people have been discussing road verges, mainly because of the vast amounts of area that they cover. Verges are very important for pollinators. They cover vast amounts of area, and one thing that's really important about this area is that the habitat is all connected. So something that's really important in conservation that is often kind of sacrificed for area is that this habitat is connected, and they can create kind of corridors throughout the landscape that allow pollinators to move freely, and so they're not restricted to certain areas.
So Ben, and tell us, what are you planning to do sort of medium and long term?
Right now we have started 2 petitions, one to the county council and one to the city council, and we'll put the links up to those at the end. And they are asking that the city and the county council change the way they manage the road verges in Cambridge and Cambridgeshire to make them more wildflower friendly and more pollinator friendly. And this is to follow guidelines produced by, for instance, Plant Life, which are being adopted quite widely now around the UK. They simply involve a change in the mowing regime, but it also involves buying some new equipment, which has been a stumbling block until now. But in fact, not only does using this new equipment make a difference for bees and other pollinators and wildflowers, it also can save and does save the council money even in the medium term, because once they start cutting less, there's less grass to cut long term, and they save a lot of money.
I believe we did see a few sort of areas where during the start of the lockdown that they were actually not being cut, and people did enjoy the flowers that they were and the insects that they used to see there.
That's right, and not just in Cambridge but all over the UK, because of lockdown. A lot of verges were left uncut, and the flowers that normally wouldn't be seen because they've been mown down, were allowed to bloom, and people really appreciated that. What we found is that many verges in and around Cambridge have been cut up to 14 times a year, so really flowers hardly ever get a chance to bloom there. But if they're cut early, say in March, and then not again until September, then they have a much longer time to flower, and pollinating insects benefit hugely from that.
So the example that King's College set over the summer, that they kept the meadow, the wildflower meadow, is that what you would like to see basically on the verges everywhere?
We can see that on our verges if we change the mowing regime, definitely. And it's without the expense of doing what they did, simply changing the way we already manage these verges with some new equipment will create that.
And would you like to do that to take place in the city and in the county?
Absolutely. That's why we have two petitions going. One for the county, because of course they manage all the verges outside of Cambridge, and one for the city, because although the city verges are owned by the county, they are maintained. The contract for maintaining them is now held by the city, so we need to address both.
Excellent. Why has this area not been all cut down? I mean, we see, it's sort of autumny now. There's part of the flowers that grew here over the summer, they were cut down, and some of them were left a little bit sort of to dry. Why is that?
Well, Antoinette, that's because if you leave grass and meadows long in certain areas, it allows the insects there to overwinter and complete their life cycle. If we cut down everything and took it away, then we would be destroying a lot of insects as well. And what we want to do is allow them to overwinter, complete their life cycle, and come back in bigger numbers next year, rather than have to start all over again from insects coming in. And leaving an area of meadow, of verge, uncut is also a big part of what we want to do.
And Ben, so the idea of the verges is not that it's just for bees and bumblebees, it's actually for insects, no matter how big or small, basically.
That's absolutely right, yes. We focus a lot on bees and bumblebees because they are the cute, cuddly, very popular icon of insects and invertebrates generally, but they aren't the only pollinators. As Claire has said, there are many other types of insects that are pollinators that we need to keep, that we need to help. And we also need to help invertebrates generally. Invertebrates are extremely important in ecosystem services. They're a vital source of food for many birds. A lot of them are in decline as well now because of the loss of invertebrates. So the bigger picture is what we want to do is to help invertebrate numbers generally.
Thank you, Ben. And what about the idea of creating a corridor of verges, like within the city and within the county, and perhaps even in broader sense, in like larger areas, not just of Cambridgeshire, but more counties? What's the idea behind that, or why that should take place?
Well, I think it is a really unique opportunity because verges do kind of form this corridor anyway. So if we were to manage them in a way that was beneficial for pollinators, it would make movement throughout the landscape for pollinators much easier. It would most likely improve our pollination services in the areas where those meadows or verges were maintained for pollinators better. And it would look nice. I think people would like to drive past and see these nice colourful meadows on the side of the road. I just think it would be a lovely idea.
Thank you.
In terms of pollinators, the evidence does suggest that yes, they are really good for pollinators, and they can sometimes be hotspots for pollinators as well. And having a more healthy pollinator community does in turn lead to a more healthy environment, a more healthy ecosystem. I also think having these nice verges and verges that are managed for pollinators are good for people's mental health, and that is also a really good indicator of like the health of the planet, I suppose. Yeah.
Excellent. Claire, are there any papers or more academic studies in relation to verges?
Yeah, we actually published a paper earlier this year which kind of did an extensive review of the literature surrounding this specific topic of road verges and pollinators. And our review actually found that road verges, or the benefits of road verges, outweighed the costs. So when we talk about the benefits, we talk about having habitat there, so for example for foraging, for nesting, for overwintering, those kind of things. And the costs would be things like collisions with vehicles, pollutants from traffic, so for example excess nitrogen in the soil, or light pollution.